The sun is slowly setting. Let me start again because I'm like kind of delirious. I'm low on like, I'm definitely have not eaten enough, which I thought I definitely for sure did eat enough, but I guess I did not. So let's just wish Therese some luck really quickly that she'll get through this video without having a moment. Hey friends, it's Therese and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the book that I need to get out of my shelf still. And the book that recently just came out and I did a vlog for it, but this is the spoiler-free review for those of y'all who want to go ahead and get, you know, some ideas for a book if you are interested in it, if you are interested in it but you don't want to pick it up yet, or if you want to just feel the nitty-gritty of everything. I will leave my review of it, my spoiler-filled vlog of it, actually my review down below for you guys to check that out if you guys want to. But that book today is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. This is her first venture into adult fantasy, so let's just kind of hop into it. I have the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, so I'll give y'all kind of the nitty-gritty of what's in the book, what's the special edition version of it anyway, so let's just kind of jump into it. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of like the trigger warnings, the synopsis, my first thoughts, the good and the bad, and the ugly, let's just talk about the original version. So I saw the cover at Target a couple days ago, and that one has a black cover. Like, it's not foiled in any way, it's not very shiny, it's black. When you first open the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, it's just a plain yellow and red cover, no like embossing, and it's just the sword catcher on there. The inner cover we have is just the map, which I think is stated for everything, but what makes it the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition is not only just the gold cover, but then also we have character posters. So we have our main boyo, Kel, on one side with his very Will Herondale looking face with, you know, the dark brown curl, like wavy curly hair and the blue eyes. And then on the other side we have Lynn, who is kind of like, I forgot who mentioned, it was Andrew during our first live show mentioned that she does look very reminiscent of like an older Clary with the reddish brown hair here. Oh, and then the end cover is the same map and then a little spiel about little Cassie Clare. Nothing too different, I think, from the books. It's just like the gold foiling and then probably the characters on there. But let's kind of hop into the book and the synopsis. This is a heavy, chunky book. This is 600 pages of adult high fantasy. Like I said, this is a Cassandra Clare's initial venture into adult high fantasy. This is her first in a series, I believe, or a duology. I don't really remember. But this has two main POVs. We have Kel, who is grown up, basically was plucked out of an orphanage as a young kid to be basically the prince's Connor, his shield and his shadow for the rest of his life. He has to dress up as Connor, know his mannerisms. He is the lookalike just in case something were to happen and there would be an attack or something, or an emergency, and Connor cannot be in that position. It is Kel's job to do that, and then as he grows up, he will switch from being the prince's shadow to the king's shield. Then on the other hand, we have Lynn, who is Ashkar, who is part of a long-lost people who have lost their homes due to the Sundering, which is the like big historical event where they have officially lost magic. And her people, while scattered throughout the globe, are one of the few people left who can use like small magic, which causes her to be persecuted because of this aspect. Now, after a failed assassination attempt, Kel must now venture deeper into another side of this royal family's world that he has not been privy to at all during his childhood or growing up. Meanwhile, Lynn, now desperately looking for a cure to help her friend from an illness, has to venture past her comfort zone and go against societal and cultural boundaries, as she is not only Ashkar, which puts that boundary on her to be able to learn more magic than she needs to, but then also the fact that she wants to be a physician and she's a woman, and in her culture that is frowned upon. It's a whole whirlwind of things happening in this book. Too much of a whirlwind, if I'm being kind of honest, but you know, we can only do so much. Okay, moving on to some trigger warnings for this. There is racism, there is murder, there is violence, blood and gore, there is death, lots of adults and a child, and then misogyny is kind of a big one in this one as well. But moving on to my first thoughts about the book, I was really hesitant about this book. We have all seen my vlog for Chain of Thorns, and we all know my thoughts on Queen of Air and Darkness, and we all know the theory that I am in, that boat of thought, where if the author's name is larger than the actual title of the novel, there's a chance that the book won't be that good. So I was very hesitant just because it is her venture out of Shadowhunters. The last few books of hers I have really either enjoyed or have just felt really like it was missing something, or there was too much going on. So while I was excited for it and I wanted to see how she was going to write this, because I think the only other ventures outside the Shadowhunter world were a middle grade series that she had done, but it was like a combined effort. I really wanted to know how this was going to play out and what was going to happen and whether or not I was actually going to even enjoy this book in the first place, because it was just like, after Chain of Thorns, I was like, do I really enjoy the Shadowhunters anymore? Do I enjoy her writing style anymore? So it was a lot of like internal turmoil for me, but I still went into the book with good expectations. I wasn't expecting to be wowed, but I was expecting to at least enjoy the books that I had read and maybe be excited for any upcoming sequels that will be happening in the future. And this is going to have a sequel because it is a series. Moving on to the things I did not like, because it's kind of, there wasn't a ton that I hated, but I think it was kind of a big leading thing. And I would like to point out on the cover who blurbed it: "Everything I look for in a fantasy by George R. R. Martin." Now, I should have taken that as a red flag, and not because I don't like George R. R. Martin. I have his books on my shelves. I love his writing style. I love how he creates plots and characters. But he is very true to being a fantastical author, and that is the fact that he likes long, drawn-out passages. He's gotten more fantastical, like traditionally fantastical, in his later books. So that should have been a little red flag to me. But the other red flag should have been that this book is a thick one. It's about 600 pages long, 604 pages. So this told me everything. But I just think, if you guys have seen my vlog, if not, you'll understand my frustrations, but I just think this book was just a little too long. It took me over 200 pages to even get past the initial setup and the synopsis of the book. We didn't see the synopsis of the book until almost 200 pages in, a little over 200 pages, which is basically almost halfway through the book, which is a lot of setup. It was a lot of world building, it felt kind of info dumpy at times, just because I was stuck there trying to figure out the world, trying to figure out the characters, trying to figure out the backstories and the lore and the magic system and the different struggles tossed here and there. But it was just a lot of setup. I wouldn't say it was unnecessary setup. I think the setup could have definitely just taken an easier turn, where we get to see more of the world building and the lore intertwined with the actual plot of the book itself, rather than setting up a good chunk of it and then having the last like 200 pages be like the more exciting portions of the book. It definitely is very character driven at the beginning, which isn't a bad thing, but I was not anticipating it, and because I wasn't anticipating it, I definitely felt like I had a hard time really getting lost in the book and still being really like roughly reminded that I was reading a book and not truly enjoying it. It felt like I had to like really, I didn't struggle to pick it up, but I was like really hesitating on picking it up just because I was like stuck there really wondering, when is this going to pick up? When am I going to start enjoying the characters a bit more? When am I going to really have an understanding of the world building? Again, it took almost over 200 pages to get there. So I think it was definitely just a bit long, but again, the trigger point for me should have been the 600 pages. The fact that George R. R. Martin blurbed it, I should have seen that one coming, because man knows how to write a really good book, but man, is it really, really thick. Like, I haven't even picked up House of Dragon yet, that like book that based off of the series, just because I know how thick that book is, and I'm not mentally ready for it. Moving on to the good things about this book, despite the length of this book, I did really enjoy it. Once the things started picking up, and once you really started to understand the characters a bit more, I had a really hard time putting the book down. I really did enjoy the way that it was written, the way that the characters were created, and I will say, I think a strength in Cassie's writing that I have seen over the years is that she just really writes compelling characters. You find yourself rooting for them, you find yourself hating them, you find yourself being intrigued by them or repulsed by them. I think it's a cornerstone of her writing that I really always enjoy when I pick up her books, whether I'm rereading or I'm picking something new. It's definitely something that I always can look forward to as a constant in her writing is that her characters are always such a very strong point in her novels. And considering a good chunk of the book is character driven, it works out. We get to see Kel and Connor's very brotherly bond, and Kel's overly amount of responsibility toward him and gratitude toward this family. We get to see the internal struggles that Connor has being the prince and having to deal with all of these things, all this responsibility, while having learned how to do none of it because of his father. We get to see Lynn struggle to push against these societal and cultural boundaries that have been placed upon her just to really help her friend and get her friend to a safe space. And we get to see their own platonic and romantic interactions throughout the book that, again, I think Cassie is just a very strong writer when it comes to creating characters that you really can root for, or you're really disgusted by, or you really just love and adore. Like, Cassie is just a very good writer in that aspect. But I really enjoyed the lore and the different layers and the politics behind this book. Like I said, the first chunk is very much character driven and very much like working toward the different layers in this novel. We get to see the underbelly of the world that we are watching or reading through, and we get to see why it's created in the way that it is, and we get to see exactly what makes it tick, what's the concerning parts of it, and how has it kind of worked in this way for so long. We get to see a lot of like the subtle magic systems, and we get to see the different like languages and the different like political like relationships that they all had, and I really enjoyed that part of the book. I think while all of that was all world building and it was very frustrating at times, I did enjoy seeing that, because that means that we don't have to set those relationships and those problems up in the later books. They'll be kind of set and we can just kind of revisit them in short little bursts here and there. I also, while this part took a little bit longer, like in the beginning of each chapter, you get a little portion of like either these little tomes that existed in the book, which is like the Tales of the Shadow King or Sorcerer Kings, and then like the story of the goddess, which is the Ashkar's goddess, like their goddess who was the one who was responsible for the Sun Ring, who removed all the magic from the land save for her peoples. While that kind of took some time for me to really get into and understand, once the plot started clicking in a full circle kind of way, I really enjoyed the story and the different like little bits that we got sprinkled throughout the novel. I thought it was a fun little way to kind of break up the chapter and set the tone for the chapter, while also giving us those hints of world building that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise without it, and we would have had like little blanks in our little memory bank and our little knowledge banks here and there because of it. I also found that the goddess portion of the novel, once we kind of came to her story's conclusion, was probably one of the more heartbreaking parts of this book, and I found myself really wishing that I had just let myself get really immersed in these like inner gallery like pages and stories, because it was just like I got to it and I was like, I want to reread this entire portion. These like maybe 100 or so pages interspersed here and there of this person, and it was just so beautifully written. And I will say, once the book picks up, it really does pick up. Like, I found myself, once the book got past the initial portion, it picked up, and I found myself having a hard time putting it down. I forgot that I was reading, and I just really was invested in the characters and the plot and what was occurring. I do think that once we got there, it was well worth the wait, but I can understand why this might be a turnoff for some people, is the length, because it's my arm's hurting just holding this up. Moving on to my rating and my overall thoughts and whether or not I would recommend this book, I give this book a 4.75 out of 5 stars. I know oddly specific for me, but I think that while I did enjoy this book, there was something missing in the book. I can't really pinpoint what it was, and I can't tell if it was the length because it was more character driven, or if I was just needing more movement in the novel itself, or maybe I wanted more point of views because we only have the 2. But that's all that I could really think of as something was missing. But I really did enjoy this book, and I am really intrigued to see how the rest of the series pans out and exactly what happens, because it did end on a cliffhanger. Overall, would I recommend? I would say so if you are a fan of Cassie Clare's writing, if you are a fan of her cornerstone characters where you can just like love them right off the bat and you just really like enjoy their presence while you're reading them, I would highly recommend it. I will warn you though, if you are not mentally prepared for a very heavy character driven book for the first few hundred pages, or maybe you're just not in the sense ready for like some of the brutal things that do happen in this novel, because there are quite a few, I probably would hold off on it for a little while, because it does take a long time to get there, and I can see people maybe who are interested in Cassie in this book and do love Cassie Clare as an author, but then also want to they're not like a huge high fantasy fan. Maybe they're not used to something outside of Cassie Clare, just know this is not her usual writing, like writing that we're used to, where we can easily just jump into something and hop back out really easily because we're so well versed in the Shadowhunters world. It is not going to be that. It's going to be a lot slower paced. It's going to be a lot calmer of a vibe and a lot more build up than we've probably seen in her books before. But I would still recommend it. I will just say, if you're not ready for a character-driven portion of it, I highly recommend you wait a second until you have time and energy to really fully commit into this novel. But that is it for my spoiler-free review of The Swordcatcher or Swordcatcher by Cassie Clare. If you guys like this video and want to see my full vlog on it where I discuss more of the world building and my issues with it, let me know in the comments down below, or rather, I'll leave the link down below. But if you guys have read this book and want to discuss it more in depth with me, let me know in the comments, or if you have other books that you would like to see that remind you of Cassie Clare's books, or this book in particular, let me know. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!